Anybody else?
Should we move on to show and tell? Or do you want to, yeah. We're now, what time is it? It's
They've kind of merged together, so I think you might want to go straight into show and tell and to see what we got left.
okay. I'll go back to my share my screen again. Some of these show and tells, like the one from Dave here, weren't actually submitted, but they were part of the coffee hour. So I thought, Dave, you might like to talk to them for the club meeting.
Sure. These are something new I've been experimenting with, spirals in wood. And this is all done by hand using a Dremel and some sandpaper and laying out all the spirals on the lathe with the index wheel. So this is red cedar, this is spalted sugar maple. And then I think I've, yeah, just showing what kind of they're used for. I'm calling them weed pots, but my wife said I probably shouldn't call them weed pots anymore. So we're coming up with a new name.
It's legal now, it's fine.
And Matt, you got some.
Yeah, these are what I gave out for as Christmas gifts this year. I turned rings that fit over top of the rings of a mason jar. And then also turned the little disc that would glued onto the lid. And they're both glued with the E6000, that sort of flexible rubbery glue.
Cool.
I had done some jar lids in the past, but they were all too thick and they didn't look great. I discovered that you really need a jar with a shoulder on it. So these are quart jars. If you use a straighter jar, then the lid looks too large. But they're walnut rings and then spalted birch and bird's eye maple lids.
Thank.
And
Any comments or questions?
With cookies for Christmas gifts.
Excellent. Is the lids, are those metal lids on there, or is that
Yep.
also turned?
Nope, it's the metal ring from the mason jar lid.
So what, did you paint those, the dark paint on that, on the lid there?
Oh no, that's walnut.
That's what I'm asking about, yeah.
Glued over top of the mason jar ring.
I see, okay, thank you.
Nice.
I think this is Barry. Is this your stuff, Barry Price?
Yes, it is. And I'd like to show it here with my rear camera on my iPad.
So shall I
if
stop
you-
sharing?
If you'll stop sharing for all of mine, in fact.
I'll tell you what, then let me just finish my screen share for some of the other people here.
That's good.
And then we'll come back at you. Okay, Barry?
Okay.
That's a preview of Barry, everybody, in a hurry. Now, Mark, I got a couple of your pictures from your from previously in the month that you put up. This is abalone, is it?
Yes.
Inlay you've been working on?
Yep. Yeah, that's cherry piece with abalone inlay. And I buy the shells and cut the abalone myself.
Oh, it's pretty.
And Judy, is it? I believe this is yours.
Yeah, that's the one that I did with Jennifer Shirley with cherry, these small Indian pots, as she calls them, and copper lids. And I learned a lot from doing that. I hope I can remember. But one of the things that was interesting is you make the lids and then first, and then turn the bowl to fit the lid.
Cool. Janine, this is these are the pictures of you actually making your
The streptohedron.
yeah, whatever you call it, streptohedron, yeah, streptothrotron.
Yeah, but
Sorry.
it's all spindle turning. So if you go back one,
Yeah,
it's just a bicone. And one of the pictures, I have a little cardboard, a skinny little cardboard like template.
okay.
I believe I sent, maybe I didn't send it. But all I did was use a newspaper glue joint on it. And then I used an X-Acto knife to make the first slice into the joint all the way around. And then I used just a putty knife, a skinny putty knife to get in there. And then I just slowly worked around and around until I could break the joint open.
So this is you breaking the joint open on that one, is it?
Correct. Yeah, and I have just a leather, it's a leather pouch just filled with some sand. It's a rifle rest,
Okay.
and it's really helpful to put stuff on top of it like this so it doesn't roll around, and it doesn't, when I'm pressing on it and things, I'm not denting the wood.
Yeah. Okay.
So Janine, how did you flatten these surfaces we're looking at now and then put the small divots in? How did you mount them?
Yeah, so so to get all the glue off was a real pain in the ass. I had to use a scraper and my fingernails until I could get all the glue off. And then I could do a very little bit of sanding just to get a clean surface. And then, of course, I sprayed it all with water to raise the grain, let it dry, and then I went over it with the sandpaper again.
Okay.
And then you can see I marked the corners.
Yeah.
So that I would make sure that I would get the orientation right, because as you sand it, you want to keep the corners matching up. It's really, really easy to get that crisp, that crisp ridge. It's really easy to sand that off.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to keep it really intentionally aligned.
So
And
you
then
didn't turn the spaces? You
So-
manually put those out?
I used a saber tooth rotary
Gotcha.
bit.
Yep.
One of the it was a big one with black, so it really aggressive burrs on it.
Yeah.
But I could have done those divots two different ways other than the way I did it. So I could have, when I sawed the blank in half, initially when I prepared the blank, I could have mounted the halves and turned them then. Or at this stage, when I had turned it and broken the joint in half, one of the techniques I was reading about was that you take, what's the putty called that you use on a car, like
Bondo.
and put Bondo inside sort of like a rounded form and pressed this into that, and then let it harden, and then I could have put it in there and then turned the divot while it was on the lathe.
Mm-hmm.
What I did was I just took a ruler and drew a line from corner to corner, and then used a compass to draw the circle. And then I just stayed within the circle that I drew with this ball-shaped burr.
You can make a jam chuck that you can turn that out with. It's a trick, but you can do it.
So that was the most expeditious way for me to do it. And it turned out very well. So very uniform, and I was happy with it. And then I didn't need to use any hollowing tools.
Rather than gluing those kinds of things together, I generally will use double-sided tape, and I've had good luck with it. It's a lot easier to get it apart than to clean it up.
Well, I might try that, because
Okay,
it was
thanks.
time-consuming.
It's starting to get a little bit later in the evening, so I'm moving along here this is Ben, I guess, again.
Yeah, this is a plate that I made for I had started it when we showed my shop during coffee hours. I showed part of it, but it's a thin blue line. It's the New Holland Place at the New Holland Coffee Shop. They're in there every morning at the same table. So I thought I'd make something to put on their table just to honor them. And it's a thin blue line, which is a symbol of the police. And that's in the bottom plate. That's a coin that they called the thin blue line coin. I bought that on Amazon and epoxied it in. And had it engraved. And the wood is tiger maple.
And how did you do the blue around the outer rim?
That I just at Hobby Lobby, I got a paint pen and just painted that. The rest of that I wanted to do epoxy, just a thin epoxy, but I could not get the color. I didn't have the right dyes for my color to get a real nice paint or the paint color. If you go back to the first one,
Oops, sorry.
that's I was trying to that black line. I was trying to get that color of the blue, and I could not get it. So and that's epoxy. And if you ever do a thin layer of epoxy in anything, you want to make sure you seal the wood first. Finish everything and seal. Because if you get epoxy in any grain or something like that, you can't get it out. It just goes in the grain. So yeah, I had the one copy. He insisted on buying it, but I wanted to keep it for a while yet. So I'll probably give it to them sometime.
Thank you, Ben.
Great job.
I'll just go back to, going back here to Dave Bleals. You want to talk a little bit to this, Dave?
Do you happen to have the picture that I sent of Lynn Walker's tree? I don't know if you have that or not.
I got all the pictures here that no, I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay, well, anyways, Lynn Walker made a tree box, and she won the Susquehanna meeting Christmas ornament competition. So I showed that to my wife, and I said I might try making something like that. And Sue thought, well, maybe something different, like a tree as a finial on a box. So I made this with a cherry base and a maple tree on it, and that's about 5 inches high, and the box is a cube that's about 2 3/4 inches, and you can see it opens up. It's a box. And so then she thought, well, she didn't think that was so hot, so she said, well, maybe a tree with the box as the base. So I made a 6-inch, that's total height there is about 6 inches. So I made the tree. And if you go to the next slide, it's a box. And she didn't like that either. So these boxes, I'm sure I'll give them to one of the kids or something like that. Next one shows them side by side. Do you have that one?
Is that there? Is this the one you're looking for?
Dave,
Yeah,
I have that
yeah.
picture of Lynn's box.
Yeah, Lynn did a great job.
Yeah, she did a real nice job on that. Anyways, the cherry is really nice, and the maple came out. You can see some of the figure in the box in the left side. Be pleased with that. I also sent you a picture of my quote photo studio. Do you have that?
Hang on a second here.
Just
Where
a
is
picture
it?
of my basement. That's all.
That was what I got.
Yeah, yeah. This is basically one of those sheets that I got at the art show. We learned about this one time a few years ago when somebody came to my basement. We had a meeting in my basement. They talked about photographing things. So here I have basically just a couple of spotlights. And then I take the picture in the center area, and the lighting kind of balances the lighting that you take. And so I take the picture, and if I'm getting too much light, in the right-hand side there, you can see that I have a piece of paper towel taped to the light fixture, and I can just tape that around and dull the light if I want. So using my phone, I take a picture, and after I take the picture, I send it to the computer. Oh, before I send it to the computer, I look at the brightness balance, and if I don't like the brightness balance, if the wood isn't showing up real well, I'll adjust the light on my camera before I send it to the computer. And once I get it to the computer, then I can size it on the computer. So that's how I'm getting the pictures I'm very pleased with the pictures that I'm getting, but it's a real simple operation.
Hey, what kind of bulbs do you put in that, Dave, in those lights?
They might be the fluorescent bulbs, or I think I replaced them with 100-watt LEDs, the daylight type of 100-watt LEDs.
The daylight.
Yes.
Yeah, good.
So,
like I said, I'm very pleased with the pictures I'm taking. So,
thanks, Dave.
Information to you.
Barry, can I just before we step in with Barry's last show and tell, I just want to let people know that the video that John and I put together for tonight's demonstration is 45 minutes long, and it's 10 after 8. So it's going to potentially go a little bit over, but that's okay by me. I just wanted to give people a heads up. So Barry, did you say you wanted?
Yeah, let me go ahead and reverse my camera here. This first, this is a piece of wood that I got at an auction. It's an African, I think it's called Moabi, Moabi, and it's quilted. And you can see it has a unusual catching of the light. And it's kind of a drooped rim. And I thought the grain in it was very pretty. It's just a clear finish that kind of like a tiger maple that just catches the light. It's about 10 inches in diameter. And then from a piece of the wood that John and I got from Martin, this is I'm pretty sure it's red elm. And this was just, I made it to do my first attempt at feet.
Very nice, Barry.
So it, I was happy with how it came out, but I thought about Doug's very thin, I think it was maple, I'm not sure, thin rimmed bowl that, or thin all the way through that Doug had. And so I was kind of pursuing that. And I got down to where it's, I can probably 3/16 thick toward the bottom, but at the rim, it's only about a 16th. The entire thing is just under 4 ounces. And it has a bad feel to it. I mean, it's very stable, but it just, you expect to have something made of wood to have more heft. So in that regard, I'm not real happy with it, but I like the way it turned out with the feet.
It's one of those gotcha pieces where people say it should be heavier, and you say, "Ah, I got you."
Yeah. And the final thing, this was my first attempt with epoxy on. I made this for a neighbor of mine. In fact, he's the gentleman that several of you have gotten cherry from his property. And he had this tree stump, just a small tree stump, just laying on a pile that had been taken out of the ground when he had an addition put onto his house. And you can see where the branches came into it. And I tried to make an amber colored epoxy, but let me just say a little bit of red goes a long way. That was 1 drop of red in about 300 grams of epoxy, and then like a drop of yellow. And I don't know how I could have made it any paler, but that was the idea on there. And the problem was, you see these white spots, pitch just kept emanating from the wood. I baked it overnight at 220 degrees, and probably 3 tablespoons of pitch came out of the wood. And I thought I was all behind that. And yet when I took it out of, when I got turning it down, it just kept on weeping and crystallizing. And
Makes it interesting, Barry.
Yeah,
So
good. That is nice.
yeah, I thought the grain really, I like the way these almost like horror film kind of look to it, you know, it, like animalized there or something, you know.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Even with that sap, it's beautiful. It's really nice.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I was
What
happy.
grain
that
did you,
the
Rick,
epoxy
did you
was-
have to go to get the smooth finish on the epoxy?
Using paint thinner, to keep the surface wet, I sanded it down to, I believe, either 1,000 grit or 3,000 grit wet or dry paper. And then it's just one of those burned in shellac finishes that I then put a Beal buffing system to it. And that made a real difference. I think, in fact, the Beal probably went right through the shellac. And by the time I got to the wax part of the application with that Beal buffer, it was surprisingly shiny and smooth without putting any ripples or whatever in the epoxy. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Barry.
Okay.
Have we missed anybody tonight with show and tell?